This isn't about sustaining the way of living of the Western middle classes anymore. This is about how quickly and with how little damage we can negotiate the surrender of ways of living that we grew up taking for granted. There was an advert that kept appearing in my Facebook feed from an organization that wants to plant 8 billion trees. And I'm going to just assume that they are in good faith and that they're as scared by climate change as many of us here are, and that they believe that their oversimple solution is really going to make all the difference. What struck me was the way that they messaged this. Can you use message as a verb? The way that they framed the message. They did this big kind of apocalyptic story about how the world would be within your lifetime. And then at the end, they said, but if we plant 8 billion trees, I'm quoting, instead of the post-apocalyptic dystopia, everything continues as usual. The morning I read that, on the front page of The Guardian, there was a report of a survey showing that the number of young people in the UK saying life is not worth living had doubled in a decade. It stands at almost 1 in 5. Everything continues as usual. Think about sustainability as a phrase, as a word, as a concept. How easily it slides into meaning sustaining the current state of affairs as much as possible at all costs. And I think that a bit like the commentators who were caught off guard by Brexit and Trump, some of the mainstream proponents of sustainability have failed to grasp how limited the appeal of everything continues as usual is. When I think now about what's at stake, the phrase that keeps coming back to me is we have to negotiate the surrender of our whole way of living. This isn't about sustaining the way of living of the Western middle classes anymore. This is about how quickly and with how little damage we can negotiate the surrender of ways of living that we grew up taking for granted. Just think for a moment about how much of the economic activity you see around you that could just go overnight. And if nobody became hungry or homeless as a result, nobody would miss it. And I suspect that pretty much all of us in the room, if we ask ourselves that question, can see a substantial amount of activity that falls into that category. David Graeber wrote an essay called Bullshit Jobs, where he voiced the suspicion that much of the activity going on within our economies today is regarded as pointless by the people carrying it out. And the strength of the response to that essay confirmed his suspicion. So if you think about what a surrender looks like, the rapid decommissioning of whole areas of the organized activity of a society and the rapid revaluation of things that have been taken for granted until very recently in that society. Think again about what it would have been like in many parts of Europe in the 1940s. That's what a surrender looks like. To negotiate a surrender, you need a credible threat. We're going to hear plenty of threat today, I think. If you need some human level of the credible threat, then actually, again, I would point you towards this strange mix of movements that have erupted over the last year or so, not least the movements beginning from young people around this continent. You also need the kind of quiet places of conversation away from the front lines where strange combinations of people come together to figure out what this looks like. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with the school called Home that we started in Sweden. Finally, if this is a surrender, it's a very strange one because it's a surrender with no victors. We're not all equally implicated, but very few of us don't have a great deal to give up and to lose within what we're talking about here, if we're honest about it. And so at a certain point, I think bringing understandings of surrender from peacemaking and military strategy together with spiritual traditions, together with the things that people who have worked with the treatment of addiction know, we might begin to find some of the clues for what this looks like. And they might tell us that surrender means giving up. being humbled, perhaps humiliated, but having a chance, not a guarantee, of living to tell the tale. So that's the thought that I'd leave you with for this morning. Thank you for having me here.
God, he's good, isn't he?